What does it mean that a tool of resistance at your disposal is a coin with a, dog's face on it? What does that mean for you?
If you go and look at the Dogecoin manifesto, which I helped write in 2021, one of the first things it says is Dogecoin, the accidental cryptocurrency that makes people smile. I've been hired by the Dogecoin Foundation to promote Dogecoin. I just go and I try and encourage what I see people doing that aligns with the vision of Dogecoin and say, hey, you're doing an amazing thing. How can I help you? How can I cheer you on? How can I boost your message? A meme actually is the embodiment of the whole internet putting meaning behind something. What is currency? Why do we put value in the US dollar or in gold or in anything really? If we all agree that it holds value, then it does hold value. When we talk about the objective of a decentralized cryptocurrency become the global reserve currency, if you will, we think that will provide a level playing field for all humanity. We need to provide value to institutions without losing our soul, without losing what it is that makes us different. I look at that as, a tool for putting power back in the hands of the people. And so that's what really drew me to this industry. And that's what I hope to achieve through Dogecoin.
Welcome to the first episode of the year. We are on January 20th. Today, I have with me Timothy Stebbing. He is CTO of House of Doge and director at Dogecoin Foundation. Hey, Timothy, how are you?
I'm really well. Thanks. Thanks for having us on the show.
Well, welcome. I've gone through your Twitter, your blogs, and stuff that you've written. You talk a lot about memetics. You talk a lot about technology. You talk about resisting the government and whatever is happening in the world. Just want to understand how you assimilate all of this and how all of this comes together in your work.
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I guess I wasn't right there at the beginning of crypto, right? I've been a software engineer for about 25 years now with a strong focus in open source development. And I guess as a young developer back at the end of the 90s, I really got indoctrinated into sort of the open source free software movement. We're going to down with Bill Gates and we're going to build, Linux is going to take over the world and all that kind of stuff, right? And so as a movement of the people, I think, the free software industry and open source development really has changed the whole world. And then I guess, coming into crypto and coming into Dogecoin in 2021, it really felt like the early days of Linux for me all over again. It was, an opportunity to look at, perhaps some of the power imbalance in the world. I tend to think fairly strongly that, we should have a fair and level playing field for all humanity. Everyone should be treated equally. And when you see powerful, banking oligarchies and, collusion between governments and things like that, being used to suppress the will of the people, that gets me a little bit annoyed. And so, when I look at Dogecoin and cryptocurrency, decentralized finance more generally, I look at that as a tool for putting power back in the hands of the people. And so, that's what really drew me to this industry. And that's what I hope to achieve. That's what I'm always striving to achieve through Dogecoin.
Social consensus kind of trumps technical, code or whatever that you write. End of the day, it's people that have to agree first. And that is often the last line of defense as well, right? Against attackers and whatnot.
Yeah, look, I think one of the things that, if you go and look at the Dogecoin manifesto, which I helped write in 2021, one of the first things it says is Dogecoin, the accidental cryptocurrency that makes people smile. And when we say the accidental cryptocurrency, it wasn't ever meant to be a serious cryptocurrency. And it started off as this joke, really to make fun of Bitcoin maxis and this kind of stuff. That was sort of the origin of it. But one of the things that it really hit a chord with was, I think it was the first time, and Dogecoin being the original meme currency, it was like this discovery that no one was expecting, right? It was stumbled upon this thing that a meme actually is the embodiment of the whole internet putting meaning behind something, right? It represents collective consciousness. In a way. And when you think about, what is currency, Why do we put value in the US dollar or in gold or in anything really, or in Bitcoin? It's because people believe in that thing. People believe that a token, essentially a token for value, if we all agree that it holds value, then it does hold value. And so if you take a meme, which is at its essence collective belief in something, and you combine that with a currency, you sort of you accidentally stumble on this thing where you bootstrap belief in a currency, which is most of what a currency needs to be a currency and to hold value. So I think it was like, that's why we say it's accidental. When you talk about fluff, I think it's interesting, right? Because Dogecoin is fun, but when you look at what it's achieved through fun and silliness, it's changed a lot of people's lives. Like one of the things that drew me to Dogecoin when I really started looking at it during the 2021, cycle was I started looking on Reddit and listening to people, just common people, talking about how Dogecoin had changed their lives and had really impacted them. And suddenly it was like the light bulb came on. It's like, this isn't just a silly thing. That may be what brings people into it. But it's a lot more than that. It's something that really can make the world a better place. So sometimes the things which are unexpected turn out to be, the most important things.
I recently went to Argentina, trekked in Argentina and stuff like that. What surprised me was everything is expensive, but the currency doesn't do well. It keeps depreciating. And one of the things that I learned while I was there was people are taught to convert their, whenever they get monthly salary, into dollars as soon as they get it. So yeah, I mean, when you don't have belief that a currency can hold its value, it will not hold value whatever the government does or whatever external mechanisms that you apply, unless and until it is internalized by people.
And just thinking about something from India's history, right? You've got Gandhi, right? And he is facing a well-armed military force. And what do you need when you're facing a well-armed military force? Well, it's like bigger firepower, right? That's what the world expects, that you're going to come up with like more guns, more people. And he came with nothing but pacifism, right? And a belief that through passive resistance he could overcome a great military force. And he actually achieved that by changing the belief of the people, right, of India. And you look at the power of maybe that is the meme before the internet, right? Like, it's belief in something. And when enough people start believing in it, it changes the whole world. So I think it's the same kind of power.
You've talked to institutions for, integrating Dogecoin in the form of payments, or whether to establish corporate treasuries and stuff like that. How do they two work together?
Yeah, it's a really interesting thing. I mean, I think when we talk about the objective of trying to see a decentralized cryptocurrency become the global reserve currency, if you will, or the default mechanism for people as a means of exchange, because we think that will provide a fairer playing field, a level playing field for all humanity. One of the things that you have to realize is, when you say all people, it really means all people. And all people means the big end of town. It means institutions. It means potentially it's your political enemies. Potentially it's nations who hate you. Because you can't be exclusive. Because the moment you become exclusive, you're back to being the same as the problem that you're trying to overcome. And so, yeah, there's this point where you have to say, we need to provide value to institutions without losing our soul, without losing what it is that makes us different. And I think one of the cool things about cryptocurrency is, if you go back to the original vision of Satoshi, he really nailed it with decentralized currency and the way that the mechanism works, with cryptographic issuance of currency taken out of the hands of government and put in the hands of essentially the math. That is the liberating factor. And so when you take that as a given and you make that the basis, then people should build structure on top of that, which eventually becomes institutionalized, because that's representative of adoption. You need mainstream adoption, you need government adoption, you need all of these things. It's a sign of actually achieving success. But how do you remain true to yourself is to make sure that we're not removing what underpins the freedom element of this, and that's pseudo anonymity. It's no one gets to control the issuance of coins. No one can take my coins off me. That those fundamentals are still in place. And as long as we're doing those things, then institutional adoption, even though for potentially, the kinds of people who got behind crypto in the beginning, crypto purists, anarchists, those kind of things, it's like, this feels wrong. Like, why are we engaging with institutions? And it's like, well, because they're part of this world that we live in. And if we're trying to, it's actually part of our success metrics. If you're trying to take over the whole world with DeFi, that it includes the people that we don't like.
Does it come across often in your conversations with developers and whatnot? And like, is there resistance among developers? I mean, so-called institutional adoption.
Absolutely. I see that very frequently. I get accused online regularly of betraying, DeFi and the movement, because I talk to people in government. I talk to people at exchanges, and I obviously I don't necessarily trust everyone, right? But I understand that if you're really being true to the mission, everyone has to be able to use cryptocurrency for whatever purposes they need, on the basis that they comply with the rules of the blockchain, so that we are ensured a level playing field. Because and I think that rubs some people in the developer community the wrong way, but I guess and what I try to say to them is, well, you don't want a level playing field. You just want the playing field in your favor now, and so a real level playing field is that everyone gets to play on it. So I guess, I'm pretty thick skinned. I'm happy to get attacked over that. My position's pretty clear. Dogecoin is for everyone, including the bad guys.
You can't exclude the people that you don't like, right? And technology by default is agnostic to how it's being used. Whoever wants to use it should be able to use it, unless and until you are hell-bent on using it for, something that is net negative for the society at large.
Well, and I think, look, I think that people do raise that. It's like, well, what if bad guys are using cryptocurrency to do bad things? Like, and my answer to that is, well, that's why we have police force, right? Like, that's why we have investigators. I have no problem if someone is using the blockchain to, I don't know, do something evil, then the authorities should go over after those people. They should investigate it. They should arrest them, and they should put them in prison. Right? Like, I think, but because that's their job. I don't think, however, that the authorities should be able to put backdoors into cryptocurrency to allow them to do that more easily, because, that's then defeating the whole purpose of what we're trying to achieve. So, I guess, that's sort of where I see it. When evil people do evil things, good people should stop them.
So what does it mean that, given that is happening, that, a tool of resistance at your disposal is a coin with a, dog's face on it? What does that mean for you?
Look, I think there's two levels to it. I was very encouraged. I remember when the Ukraine war began, and there was a story that came out about a woman who had converted all of her assets to Bitcoin, and was able to get over the border without having all of her property stolen, because, when you cross a border, the guards, they shake you down, they take all your stuff. And she was able to, remember her key phrase, get to the other side. And you look at that and you go, wow, that's amazing. Like, that's what this is meant for, right? So there's, as a tool of resistance, is an ability for freedom fighters and things to be able to continue to operate without being sanctioned. Those are all good things. on a probably a more macro level, I look forward to a day where, and maybe this doesn't happen, but when you look at these forever wars, you have governments which are able to print infinite amounts of money, and then use that to fund infinite war that continues to just go on and on, by pushing that, essentially, through inflation. They push a tax back on their people, to be able to, perpetuate these conflicts. If you had imagine a world where everything was decentralized finance, right? There was nothing else. There was no money printer for government. They would have to be far more conservative in their conflicts, because there would be a finite supply of money, and they would have to go and raise more if they wanted to, invade someone, for instance. And so what would that require? They would require the will of the people of their nation to donate to a war effort, potentially like it used to be, 1,000 years ago or whatever. So I look at, I look at the tool right now as a mechanism for people who are escaping conflict, for people who are, fighting for survival. But also I look forward to a future where removing the money printer is going to hopefully reduce the forever wars and defund them.
A lot of good gets funded through that currency, but I would love to know what the proportion of usage is. I don't think there's any way to know. How do you explain Dogecoin to someone who's not in crypto?
I'm a pretty conservative guy. People come up to me and say, why, they think I'm crazy for being involved in cryptocurrency. They've only heard bad things about it. Or they ask me, should I be getting involved? Should I be investing? They feel like they're missing out on something. Most of the people who I meet, who aren't already in crypto, like, it's a different story if they've drunk the Kool-Aid, whatever, they're on that path. But if I'm just meeting a regular person, what I tend to say to them is, unless you're willing to spend a significant portion of your time tracking the markets and that kind of stuff, you should not invest in cryptocurrency. I think it's because the thing is, right now we're in speculation mode, right? We're bootstrapping, a new form of money. There's money to be made here, but there's also money to be lost here. And then so in general, I tell friends and family, stay clear. But what will happen is eventually, some form of digital currency will come along, and it will change how you do everything in life. And so keep an eye on it from that point of view. And so, and then I go on to explain, I think that Bitcoin opened Pandora's box in a way. Digital currency is coming in one form or another. It's not going to go away. And so right now you're either going to get this sort of dystopian future where it's controlled by the government. They can take away your money whenever they like, and you have no power over it. Or you can have this sort of utopian vision of a decentralized currency that gives the power back to the people. And so there's a bit of a war going on right now to determine which one of those outcomes it's going to be. And I tell people I'm fighting on the side of the decentralized currency, and that's what we're trying to do with Dogecoin. So that tends to be how I explain things. And then they just look at me a bit weird, like I'm crazy.
I think there were like 10,000 memes being launched on Solana, probably on a daily basis. Most of them, 99.9% of them, being cash grabs from users or investors who don't know any better. Do you think that weighs heavily, or that weighs very negatively for someone who genuinely wants to do good?
Absolutely. I think it's inevitable. I mean, like whenever there's money to be made, there'll be people looking to scam people. And it's an unfortunate feature of where we are, I guess, in the rise of digital currency. I don't, I feel like, I guess that's why I tell people right now to avoid it, because unless they're going to go and look for utility, and I guess that's what I look for personally. If I'm going to invest in something, hype means nothing to me, right? It's, do I think that this is solving a problem for the world? because if so, for any particular product, if it's solving a real world problem, then it has a possibility of succeeding. People will use something that solves real problems. It doesn't matter how much you hype something up. At the end of the day, if it doesn't solve a real problem for someone, then it's just beanie bears, right? Like it's just it's a pump and dump scheme. So and I think the thing is there's a large number of people who lean into that and say, oh, there's a lot of unsophisticated investors out there, and they use that to they use FOMO, they use all these techniques to extract liquidity out of unsophisticated investors. I think there's a reason that we have things like the SEC in America and like Australia has similar sort of exchange commission, that we have this concept of sophisticated investor checks for people who are buying into securities. It was because in hundreds of years ago, we had all these scams back then, right? Like, when suddenly the stock market sprung up, people were doing all the same things as they're doing now. It's the same old story. And we decided that we wanted to protect people who were, I'll be honest, too stupid to protect themselves, right? I think from an investment point of view, like I personally don't think money should be invested in. I know it sounds strange being in the crypto industry. I think money serves the purpose of as a means of exchange better than a store of value. I think, if you want to store value, buy land, invest in businesses that make, profit, that kind of stuff, right? Money in my mind is primarily there to exchange as a medium of exchange. Sorry. And so the idea of investing in a medium of exchange, I grew up in sort of, I guess, a low socioeconomic sort of public school environment. No one ever thought that we would amount to much. They never told us how to save money, how to use money wisely. It was just expected that we would go to work and we would spend it all and get a mortgage and be on that wheel, right? And so when you look at the sort of person who's brought up like that, they think having a big bank account with $1 million in it sounds like, well, you've made it, right? But if you actually talk to people who manage wealth well, the idea of keeping assets liquid in cash form is ridiculous. It's like, no, I have assets in businesses. I have assets in shares in companies which grow over time because they're building utility and they're going to sell products and services and all this kind of stuff. For some reason, crypto bros were kind of like flipped that back on its head and gone, no, like, money, you want to hoard money again. It's like, well, what changed? Nothing. We've just like, we've got a new shiny object, and we can fool people over again, right? Like, so, but then the thing is, we are in the speculative bootstrapping phase of a new financial system. And so because of that, people can make money. And so, I guess that's how I look at it. It's not a long-term solution.
But again, to your point of whether it's a good medium of exchange, I think the answer is no, even at this point. Will that change at some point? I don't know. Right? I mean, people seem to be preferring borrowing dollars against their Bitcoin and spending dollars instead of spending their BTC. So I don't know whether that changes at any point in time.
Well, I think that the Bitcoin community pivoted towards being a store of value, many years ago. And so, we at the Dogecoin community, we see ourselves very differently. Like, we're not trying to achieve being a store of value, which sounds, people get very confused about that. It's like, well, then why am I investing in it? I go, that's a good question. Why are you investing in it? We want you to spend it, and that sort of, there we do Dogecoin. There's 5 billion new coins minted every year, which is a mechanism that was created as a joke to make fun of Bitcoin. But ultimately, it turns out, that sort of around about a 2% inflation rate is actually really good for a currency that you want to be a means of exchange. So we do have from my point of view, a very different mission to maybe Bitcoin. We don't want to see Dogecoin go to $100, or what, because, suddenly people don't want to spend it anymore. Our objective is to be, currency.
But is a price important at all for Dogecoin?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely it is. A stable price, obviously is important. And I still don't think that anyone in the industry knows how that should be defined. I mean, if you start to, I'm not, sorry, I'm not an economist. I'm a software engineer, right? So excuse my, my poor terminology or whatever, right? But, I think ultimately, you want something that's stable, that is, but what does stable mean, right? Like, people call a stable coin something that's pegged to the US dollar. Well, the US dollar
Is not
almost has
stable.
runaway inflation. It's not stable. So it's a lie, right? Like, the whole thing is a house of cards. And so I think that the things that are stable are, I don't know, the price of groceries, or, what can I actually do with it? Like, the utility of currency is that I can go and I can buy my groceries, I can pay my rent, I can, and so what should currency ultimately be pegged to? I can't answer that question. I've thought about it in the past and thought maybe it should be like the average price of land or something, but it certainly shouldn't be another fiat currency. Like, I think that's absurd. The whole idea of Dogecoin to $1, it's like, well, that's a shifting target, right? Like, can I think of something better right now? No, but I think that as what we consider currencies changes over time, and I really think that real world assets are going to play a big part of this, because right now we're I know it's early days, but you see a lot of people starting to talk about tokenizing everything, like land, property, hard assets, things which are real world assets, I guess. And those are things which actually have value, right? Like, suddenly, like, if you go back to, like, think back, it's medieval times, and I've got a basket of eggs and you've got some milk, and, like, how do we work out how much milk equals one egg? That's why currency was invented. Well, it's invented because I cannot equate these two things, on a basis that makes sense every day. But now that we're starting to tokenize real world assets, potentially I see a future where that starts to become the thing that people are pegging stuff to. So maybe it's like the average price of an acre of land, for instance, as a real world asset. Well, maybe that becomes something that's some sort of oracle that you go, Dogecoin is worth something against that, or I don't know, like something that's more tangible. I think we need to get back to actuals, not imaginary made up currencies, if that
So,
makes sense.
okay, so synthesizing all of this, what is Dogecoin's utility for you, and how do you try to convince that is the utility, to new people?
Yeah, well, I think that when I talk to people who are interested certainly from an institutional point of view, why would you be interested in Dogecoin? I talk about the original vision of Satoshi Nakamoto. Like, I go back to the original Bitcoin white paper, and I point to the global financial crisis of 2008, and I say these are the symptoms of runaway inflation, money printing, all of these things which come with having centralized financial systems. And this was a great idea. Satoshi, whoever he was, had a really good idea, which I personally believe, if it was embraced globally, would solve a lot of problems. We go back to that level playing field, defunding forever wars, all these kind of great outcomes that you would have. And then I say, but Bitcoin, and I know people get angry at me for saying this, Bitcoin lost its way, right? Like, the global the financial system came and dangled the carrot of profitability in front of the Bitcoin community, and they took that bait. And they pivoted from the original let's be a means of exchange, to being a store of value. And so I then turn around and I say, Dogecoin hasn't done that. Dogecoin has continued with that original vision, of simply being a means of exchange that is fair, that can't be cheated, that can't be manipulated by, global governments. And I guess as a optimist and a purist, to me, right now, when I look around, it's still on a trajectory to hopefully achieve that one day.
So it was pretty difficult for Bitcoin to be medium of exchange. So then what is the other property of money? Too, right? It is liquidity and it is store of value. It was by elimination that I think everyone landed on store of value rather than saying that, no, look, you should focus on store of value, because it was difficult for it to be medium of exchange given the constraints. And we understand that those constraints is what makes Bitcoin so good but again, you can't operate at that speed and that price, that cost for people to keep exchanging it all the time.
So, I don't resent the Bitcoin community for making that decision. I think that Dogecoin has had the benefit of following up, and plowing ground that's already been, plowed by the Bitcoin community. Right? We and it's the same with any open source technology. We all say, we build on the shoulder, we stand on the shoulders of giants who've gone before us. And so, maybe it's just fortuitous that we, have that opportunity to step in and fill that gap. And, maybe it's like that sort of relay race, we take the baton and get to run with it. And, people in the Dogecoin community will absolutely shoot me for saying this, but, if Dogecoin pushes the narrative of decentralized finance for the next few years, but ultimately something else manages to take over the world but remain true to the original intent, I won't be sad that Dogecoin played its part in that, because ultimately I'm looking for that level playing field for my grandchildren, not just the one that I like. I mean,
you might get into trouble for this, but I agree, right? I mean, and hopefully everyone serious who's building in crypto follows same ideals. In terms of influences of characters, how has Elon Musk influenced Dogecoin?
So, look, Elon's obviously, he's a really big personality out there on the internet. But at the end of the day, he's a Dogecoin fan, like every other Dogecoin fan. Everyone gets to influence Dogecoin by, helping out the projects, building infrastructure, and he's done those things, right? He's added Dogecoin payment to some of his products and things like that. So in that way, he's influencing the adoption. But he has as much or as little power as everyone else in the community. That's the beauty of a decentralized project. Anyone gets to come and do whatever they like. And if everyone else likes it, then that thing sticks, right? And so, we've Elon has supported the Dogecoin, community, through advocacy, and very thankful for that. But he's not involved in the day-to-day. He's got his own business to run.
Multiple, right? Not just one.
That's it. I don't think he's trying to win the cryptocurrency war.
Oh, not yet.
But I think he said it. He likes memes and he likes dogs. So
in terms of the Doge ecosystem right now, where are we? What is happening? How has that changed in the last, let's say, 4 years?
Yeah, well, look, 4 years ago, Dogecoin was primarily used for tipping on Reddit and forums and internet, IRC hangouts and things like that. It was a tipping currency. It was primarily a meme, and then really with the influence of people like Elon, and back in that 2021, the whole Wall Street bets, all that kind of stuff that was going on back then. Dogecoin sort of got caught up in all of that, and I think that was the point where people started to sit up and take notice, and they said, "Hey, there's something real here. We just need to dig around and like work out what that is." And so, when we reinvigorated the Dogecoin Foundation back in 2021, it was with this idea of, I came on as the first employee back then, and as a software engineer, I was looking at this thing and saying, well, if I was asked to integrate this into a platform, how would I do that? And I looked at it, I was like, it would take 6 months and a team of people to understand. So one of the first things we need to do is make that easier. How do we lower the bar for entry to people who want to just accept Dogecoin? And so we set about building open source libraries, having hackathons, doing all these kinds of things to make it easier. And now, 4 years later, we go from having what was really a developer ecosystem of maybe 5 to 10 people. Like I would, if I had to guess, I would say there's probably over 100 people working in the Dogecoin ecosystem full time, being like full time employed developers across numerous companies, working on numerous different projects. You have the MyDoge team who are building out a layer 2. They're building Doge OS, which is like a spot contract EVM compatible layer 2 for Dogecoin. They've got a huge group of developers building dApps and all sorts of things, for that environment. House of Doge is building integration for institutional payment providers. We've got an app which will be coming out very soon. I think there'll be an announcement about that probably in about 5 hours. So keep an eye on the socials. But where there's a lot of stuff that's being built right now, and what really warms my heart is that it's all focused on utility. It's focused on payment integration. It's focused on how do you let the average person who, without much hassle, go and sell goods and services on the internet. So, for instance, there's the app that I've been working on in House of Doge, which will be announced very soon, that has facility for people to come and start what we call a hustle. So you've got a product, you want to sell it online, you just get the app, you can list your products, you can sell them, you can get paid in Dogecoin. You can do all this great stuff, and that it's free of charge. So that's the kind of thing that we're building, that we hope will really kick off a real economy, a real crypto based economy.
Why has this taken over a decade for Dogecoin to get into all of this? Is it because people changed, the leadership changed, and then you realized, okay, this is the direction that we want to take?
I'm always very reluctant to talk about leadership in the Dogecoin community because we're a decentralized project.
Fair point, but what changed? That's the major question, not that.
I think it was a realization within the community that we were no longer a joke, right? Like, it was, hey, there's actually a shot here to make it, as a real currency. We've been joking around and having fun, and suddenly something happened in 2021 that pushed people from, hey, this is just lighthearted fun, to, hey, we have a shot at achieving that original vision and that original mission. One of the things that I've spent the last, 5 years doing is repeating that over and over again to everyone who listen. And it's exactly what I've just been saying to you for the last 45 minutes. Stop thinking of crypto as, a way to get rich quick. Stop thinking of it as a way to, yes, it's fun. All these things are true, but look deep inside yourself and say, do you want to make an impact on the world? Do you want to change history? Dogecoin actually gives you, just the everyday person, a chance to be part of a movement which could do that. And I think that people are starting to believe that. And I think that maybe that's what's ultimately changing the trajectory, and people are taking it more seriously.
How is it to manage, community that has very diverse interests of sorts? Do these interests feed into each other? How does that work?
They do. I like to tell a story. You're familiar with Metallica, the band, right? Yeah. They had an album called Symphony in Metallica where they went and they got a symphony orchestra to play with them. And if you watch that video, there's the event, and it's held at this symphony orchestra, like it's this, the building where the orchestra usually plays. But they're playing with Metallica, and there are two lines of people going into that building. One are Metallica fans with like ripped jeans and Ride the Lightning t-shirts and mohawks. And then the other queue are people dressed up in like suit and tie, and they're the opera, they're the orchestra, the people who are normally go and listen to Beethoven or whatever. And there are these two lines, and they're just looking at each other, going like, "Who are you people, and why are you here?" But like they were all going to see the same show, right? And I think that that's a perfect analogy, because you've got these institutional investors, and they're like the guys in the suits, and they're looking over at these crazy Dogecoin users with spiky hair and memes and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, but you guys are all going to see the same show, right? You all see something, you all see something of value in this, and that's the superpower of Dogecoin, right? And that's the superpower of the meme, is that it unifies people from all these different diverse backgrounds. And as they get to, I think this is part of what I see my job as, is breaking down these barriers and saying, okay, they look different to you, they smell different to you, they say different things, but they're also Dogecoin fans. And I think that the more we break down those cultural walls and cultural barriers, the more we start to move towards the kind of world that we like to live in, even.
So is your job a function of price? How difficult is it? Because for these diverse groups, there's probably only one thing that matters at the end of the day.
Well, I mean, I guess in terms of my job, like at the Dogecoin Foundation, we don't have huge bags of Dogecoin lying around, because Dogecoin happened before there were all before the word ICO even existed. There was never a dev lockup or anything like that. So there's not a lot of Dogecoin sitting there for development, and so the Dogecoin Foundation has existed entirely on the charitable donations of people who believe in the mission. And so we've had funding from probably some of the people you can imagine we've had funding from. There are wealthy individuals out there who believe in the mission of Dogecoin, and they donate sometimes on a regular basis to development. And so our ability to operate the development team at the Dogecoin Foundation is not tied to price, and so we don't, it's a real blessing, right? But it certainly is for for-profit entities, right? Who are starting to build in this space. And that's a real concern for some people. It's like, they say, "Oh, you want me to come and start a startup and build Dogecoin solutions?" It's like, well, but the price fluctuates so rapidly. And I guess my answer to that is, well, yeah, but remember, we're not a store of value. That's not what we're trying to be, a store of value. So maybe store your value somewhere else. And there are moves towards that. Obviously stablecoins in recent years have provided a big mechanism for being able to be that, like we said, within the limitations of the US dollar. But, and I don't want to give too much away, but there are other asset classes coming online, which I think are going to provide more interesting sources of value, which I think makes Dogecoin more and more compelling for that use case of just being a medium of exchange.
Community management to you, does it have to be organic? Does it have to be managed in the first place, or it just emerges and stays?
Yeah, look, I think that it's funny, because I talk to a lot of people in the Dogecoin community, and there are different Dogecoin communities. There's like the Reddit community, there's the X community, there's giant Discord server with tens of thousands of people in it. They think, and each one thinks that they're the whole Dogecoin community. And they're the only people who matter. And it's like, hey guys, you got to realize that the community is so much bigger than one group of people, and no one person can manage that. What do I see my role as? I've been hired by the Dogecoin Foundation to promote Dogecoin, and so what I try to do is to go to every one of these communities, not in some sort of authoritarian manner, because I have no authority there. I just go and I try and encourage what I see people doing that aligns with the vision of Dogecoin. So it's like go into any one of these communities and say, hey, you're doing an amazing thing. How can I help you? How can I cheer you on? How can I boost your message? Because I think, I think there's an interesting thing where you go, well, is that organic or is that, a contrived and managed thing? It's like, I think encouraging people is a intentional, it's an intentional thing you have to set out to do. But if the encouragement turns into organic growth for their community or their part of the community, then, it's a win for everyone. And so I'll give you an example. I was talking with a guy, Red Rider, on X, who's a big Dogecoin fan, in Miami about a year ago now. And we were just spitballing ideas. And I said, back at the early days of Linux, we used to have these things called Linux user groups where people would meet up and they'd install Linux on each other's computer. And it was great. We'd have a pizza and talk. It's like, wouldn't it be cool if we had Doge user groups, right? Like, where people actually met up for real and, got together and, helped, I don't know, all the things that you could do with Dogecoin, right? And so he's actually gone off and with some other people in the community, they've built Doge's.app. It's a website. You can go there and you can sign up. And there are now hundreds of different communities around the world that have sprung out of that, right? And each one of these things, some of them will grow and flourish, some of them will die off. No one person or one organization can control all of that. And that's the beauty of the whole decentralized, nature of Dogecoin is, all we can do is, encourage one another, and like, this is why, I'm always talking about like doing a good every day, right? Like, I try and find people who are doing good things with Dogecoin and then promote them and say, hey, look at this guy. He's doing this really cool thing. There's a guy, who's just recently been, popularized on X. His name's Dogevan. His account is Dogevan. He goes around and rescues, dogs from lost dogs homes and things like that. That's something to be celebrated. It's like, here's a guy who's doing a cool thing. He's representing Dogecoin. So I'm gonna keep pushing his material, right? Like, I'm gonna find someone who's, looking after homeless kids. I'm gonna promote that, because at the end of the day, finance touches every aspect of our lives, right? And so there's so many different verticals that people can be exploring why Dogecoin is a benefit. They're using it as a tool to educate or to help people. I think the more we highlight those things, the more, it's just how I see it. That's how I like to see the community grow, right? Like, because then we end up with something which is a positive force in the world and not just, let's all be here to make a lot of money.
So it's a function of helping intentionally and then it taking, some.
Yeah, both.
Yeah.
Both.
It's both. Yeah. I think that's about all the things that I had. Is there anything that I've missed, first of all?
No, I think that was great. Like, just thanks for having us on the show. It's, really excited to chat with you. I love talking about this sort of stuff. So
amazing. And is there anything you want to leave us with?
Do only good every day.
Awesome. Thanks a lot for the time. Really, really appreciate it. And we can do this sometime again.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks a lot.